My husband and I had been married for 10 years. They weren't the 10 easiest years of my life. We had a fairly tumultuous marriage. There were times that were great and there were times that were not so great. We had 2 children together, 2 lovely boys. It was fireworks night in November 2002, and as a family we went to watch the local firework display. There was lots of loud music and there were fabulous fireworks. And my husband turned to me and said, "Oh, I've got a really nasty headache. I'm really sorry, we're going to have to go home." So the friends that we were with decided they'd come home with us, and we went back, and in fact his headache just increasingly got worse over the next few days. So much so that he wasn't able to get out of bed. So I called the doctor, and the doctor came and gave him some very strong medication which didn't actually remove the headache. A few days later he was admitted to hospital, and they gave him a scan, a CT scan, which showed an abnormality on his brain, which was quite a shock to us. He was then transferred to Southampton, where there's a very good neurological centre, and he was scanned again, which showed that he had a very aggressive brain tumour. That was quite a shock to us. The children were very small at the time, aged 3 and 8, and I think to begin with we just couldn't quite come to terms with what was happening. It was all just a little bit unreal. He was rushed into surgery where the surgeons performed an amazing operation to debulk his tumour. They weren't able to completely remove it because it was too aggressive and growing into the nerves, but they removed as much of it as they could. The radiotherapy finished at the end of April, just in time for his birthday, his 38th birthday, and we celebrated by taking our eldest son for his very first Chinese meal out, which he loved. So we have very precious memory of that last birthday together. And not long after that, Kevin's headaches returned. So in May of 2003, the headache returned with a vengeance, and he was admitted to our local hospice. It became very clear after a little while that Kevin wasn't actually going to be coming home with us, and we had to start to prepare to let him go. And that was a really bittersweet time for us. The room that we shared together for those final weeks in the hospice was such a beautiful place. We laughed a lot, we cried a lot. We were able to do a large proportion of our grieving together, which was a very precious thing to do, and something that I've learned since was such a privilege, because there are many people who just don't get that opportunity. My husband was able to say things to me that I could carry through over the following weeks, and in fact years. You know, he made me promise that I wouldn't grieve forever, that I wouldn't just stop living. He made me promise I would carry on with my life, and that I would love again, that I wasn't to be afraid. The morning that he did choose to pass away, and I do believe for him it was a choice, he waited. I'd been sitting by his bed off and on all night. We had the children with us in the room. He wanted the children to be nearby, so the children were sleeping with me in the room. And I finally got into bed at the request of my eldest son, who just needed a cuddle with his mum. And as I slowly drifted off to sleep, I was woken by the nurse, who said, "I think you should come now, because his breathing's changed." And he chose that very moment, as I walked round the bed to get to the side where I could access him, to just slip away. It was a very strange feeling. I didn't cry. I didn't break down at all. I just stood and looked at him, and in fact, he looked so peaceful. He'd been in so much pain for the last few days before he died. Even the strongest medication couldn't control the pain he was in. And he just looked like he was asleep. He looked very, very peaceful. And I felt very, very peaceful at the time myself. The next week or so sort of went in a blur. It felt like the world was going on around me and I was somehow slightly removed. I remember feeling really cross with the world why is everyone else going about their business? Don't they know that my husband's dead? Don't they know that I'm hurting? Don't they know that it's just never going to be the same? How can they carry on? How can the world keep turning? It was a very surreal time for me, and the children had their everyday needs. They were grieving for their father, but children grieve in a very different way to adults, and the children still needed to eat. They still needed to be entertained. They still had the same demands on me that they would usually have, which was very, very difficult. After the funeral, we were left at home on our own. During the week or so that passed after Kevin died, we had friends with us all the time, so I wasn't on my own. And I remember when my friend left, the feeling just of not loneliness, but just aloneness. I felt so very, very alone with the children. In the weeks and months that followed Kevin's death, as well as having to cope with all the new emotions and the emotions of the children and a different lifestyle, I had to take on all sorts of responsibilities that I didn't have before. Suddenly, I had to deal with the finances. I had to make the awkward phone calls to the utilities. I had to take on all of the things that Kevin used to do. I had to empty the dustbin. I never emptied the kitchen bin. That was his job. And I still don't like emptying the kitchen bin. Something that was very important to me after Kevin died was being able to talk to people. To be able to talk to people about what had happened, to be able to talk to people about how I was feeling, about the fact that he was missing from our lives. It was really important for the children as well to feel that we weren't just going to forget Daddy, that actually he still held a very special place in our hearts and in our home. We had lots of photographs around. I was very grateful for the people who did talk to me and for the friends who said to me, do you know what, I'm really missing Kev today. I'm really missing him. I was thinking about this and it just brought back a memory, or I heard a piece of music and it just made me think of something that he said to me. And those were really precious times for me. They were really precious things to know that it wasn't just me that was missing him. It wasn't just my family and the people closest, but it was the friends as well, that our friends also missed him and also felt that loss. Just under a year after Kevin died, which was about 10 years ago now, a friend came to me with a Care for the Family magazine with an article entitled A Different Journey, written by Bob and Joy Jones, which told me about a weekend that they were holding for people who'd been widowed young. And he said to me, do you know what, I really think it would be a good idea for you to go to this. And I looked at the article and I just thought, I cannot think of anything more frightening than going away on my own. I hadn't been away on my own since Kevin died. I hadn't been without the children for a day since Kevin died. So the thought of going somewhere on my own was quite frightening. But do you know what? It turned out to be one of the best weekends of my life. The reception that I got there was just phenomenal. The love and the care poured out by the team, and the understanding, and the opportunity to talk to other people who were going through the same thing as me, who had recently been through what I was experiencing, to know that the things that I was feeling were perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable, and that I didn't have to behave in a particular way, was very releasing for me. The weekend for me, I think, was a real turning point. It was when I began to feel that there was actually hope for me, that I could do this, and that I wasn't a single parent, but actually I was a double parent, that I was being mum and dad, and it was no It was no wonder that I was so exhausted because I was doing the job of two people. It was just a fantastic opportunity to ask questions to someone who knew where I was coming from, and to just put a few things in place that I could take home and work through with my children. Things that might seem obvious to someone else, but actually I almost had to relearn how to be a parent because it was a very different type of parenting that I was doing. I'm really glad that I got in touch because it's been a really positive experience for me and helped me to totally change my outlook on life.